You're listening to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, it's good to see y'all again. I've been a little out for the last 2 or 3 days, but I'm back. You know, they can keep me down, but not forever. But anyway, today we're going to have an important podcast. As always, I like to think important, but more important than normal. We have Larry Scott here, and we're going to talk about some of the issues facing the city, particularly about the police station issue and the funding and that and whatever else. He's got a whole bunch of notes, so he looks like he's ready to go take a test here. So he's good to go. Anyway, how you doing, Taylor?
I can't complain. How are you?
Yeah, well, that's why I'm sitting like this, and I won't be moving around much, you know. The last couple of days, I'm just glad they didn't have deacon meetings in my house because it was not fun. For those who asked, I hurt my back Friday evening, and I didn't realize I'd hurt it that badly until Saturday morning, so I had to miss out on what I'd planned. I was going to go to a football game and then all this other stuff, and had to come home, and we went to the doctor, and my wife was worried about it being a broken rib or something like that. It's not. It's just a very deep bruise. And so when I turn or twist, you notice it. Larry, you had back problems before, right?
Oh, I've had back problems recently, hip problem, knee problem.
Yeah, you don't really realize just how debilitating a back problem is until you have one. You know, just the simple things. And you live in dread of a sneeze or a cough, something like that, because it's going to rack you up. But I'm good enough today, and that's all that matters. Thank you for the well wishes. I had many people send me, their prayers and condolences, etc. So thank you for that. So how you been, Larry?
I've been doing good.
You enjoying your time on the council?
Enjoying my time on the council. I'm glad you're here today, Brad. I'm sorry you're in pain.
Well, I'm doped up a little bit with Advil, by the way. All right.
Ooh.
I didn't take the muscle relaxer because I didn't want to be loopy or anything. No, I'm not taking painkillers because I just didn't want to get that to be an issue. But anyway.
But yes, I am enjoying my time on the council. We've got a great council. We all work together good. I've seen some of the councils in the past, some of the issues they had. I was a little nervous about coming on the council, but everybody's been excellent.
What I've noticed is that what y'all debate about, and even if there's some emotion behind it, it's still collegial and still amicable and with respect. Now, what we're debating about police stations and parks and infrastructure, this is what city council should focus on, not all the hair pulling and goofy crap that we had to deal with, but this is what we, so when people see this is democracy in action, so to speak, when you see this kind of give and take, push and pull, whatever you want to say, at the political level. I wish our U.S. Congress worked like this, instead of winner take all and burnt, scorched earth policy and that kind of stuff. But before we jump into all that, I want to say thanks to the sponsors, and also make an announcement at the end of the first round about a show coming up in a couple of weeks. Thank you, CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. I may not be seeing you for a little while because it takes a while for a back problem to go away, doesn't it? It's going to take me, they tell me, about at least a couple of weeks, but I should be able to resume somewhat normal activities. But the thing is, a good workout and a good program would have prevented some of that if I'd have been more diligent, you might say. But thank you, CrossFit Burleson, 317 Southwest Wilshire. I hope you're doing okay. Also, thank you to Shandy Stoggs. I just was texting her today. No, it was yesterday, actually, and she's still doing pretty well. It's again, we hear all about the the interest rates and the housing and how that's a problem. We're still selling, aren't we, Larry?
We're still selling. I've got 2 houses in my neighborhood that have sold, and another one for sale, so they're still moving.
What are they moving because they're their neighbor? Or is that what you're saying to me?
There you go.
Okay. Anyway, no, that she does say that market is slower for Burleson, but it's still, in comparison to other areas of the country, we're still doing pretty well. I read that the DFW area and the Phoenix area are the 2 hottest markets still left. So it's there's still people coming here, and that's a good thing. Also, thank you to Our Place with Otto. I may be there Friday. Friday. I'm going to meet somebody there if I could still make it. But anyway, they do such a great job. They really, really do. And I like the fact that I can go in there and I see familiar faces, familiar staff people. The service is great. And the attitude, I mean, I pick up on a real positive vibe from the employees, and that's a testament, I think, to them. Oh, and Sarah Carlson says, good afternoon. Thank you for the work you do, for your community. Appreciate your leadership and the time you and Sherry devote to Burleson. That could be echoed many times over, absolutely, because I know you get paid a princely sum, what, $5 a meeting?
Yeah, $5 a meeting, and it's worth it.
Yeah, boy. Well, anyway, thank you, Otto, over at Our Place. Thank you to Chris and Nathan over at Wild Cigar. I was over there last week, and what I like about the Wild Cigar is that in the afternoon, you go there about 3 in the afternoon, and they have about, I counted about 13 to 14 people there, and it was very diverse, and it was, some were working, some were just enjoying the afternoon, so it's a good place to do that. So get yourself a place to do your kind of business. Wild Cigar is a good place to do it. Also, Tiffany Nico came out with a new magazine last week. It focuses on small retailers, and I have a message about that in a minute. And it has great articles, great ads. It goes to 30,000 homes plus a bunch of retail outlets. I go to Our Place, I go to Southern Gym, I go to these other places, and there's a big stack of them. So it gets more reach than just who's getting it in their mailbox. So if you're looking to advertise, she's a good place to do it for the Christmas season. Also, Burleson Buzz, friend Cody O'Brien, he'll be on in about 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll talk about him launching his his news blog. And he's got a lot of good information about city council, about school, whatnot, and he's really trying to make this work, and he's doing a really good job, I think, of having a local news source, because after the Burleson Star folded, we really didn't have one. And that brings me to an announcement. On November 20th, I'm going to have a small business show, and right now, I've only had about 5 that have said, I'd like to have a piece of that action. So if you're hearing this, or even if you don't have business, but you know somebody who does, let them know, because what we plan to do is go by with my little bitty iPhone and make a brief little video clip, and we'll talk about the businesses. I'm going to try to get Mary Slaney on the show, and she's tentatively agreed, but she also, she's very busy. And I'd like last week, I did one for Moretti Oil, which was pretty interesting. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Because it's free, there's no fee, no obligations, no contracts, no nothing. Okay, let's get to business. Straight off the top, the biggest issue I've seen in the last couple of meetings, or at least a meeting from about 3 weeks ago, was the police station funding. So I'm only vaguely aware of the details. So you fill in where I'm either mistaken or just don't have the data I need or whatever. But my understanding is that when the bond was passed, we had $36 million for the police station. Is that right?
Well, that's what was put out there was
Right.
$36 million. That was suggested by the bond committee. Mm-hmm. The structure they wanted to develop was $36 million, mm-hmm. and that was also something that staff recommended, mm-hmm. and that was the best option at the time they had. Now, staff picked that up and put it in presentations, but that wasn't the commitment we made to the citizens.
So it was, in a sense, underfunded.
It was definitely underfunded.
And not to go rehash old political arguments or whatever, but wasn't that the main argument against the bond, was that it was too hypothetical, shall we say?
That was one of the arguments. I can't go back and change. None of us can what the bond did.
But I'm just saying, I remember when it was being discussed, a lot of people said, are you sure that's enough, or is it was not, shall we say, broken down in categories within the bond itself, that $36 million.
No.
It was just basically, here's some money.
Well, they formed the bond committee, and the bond committee was given an $88 million capacity to work with. And then it became a little less. And then they were told by staff to spend $10 million on the police department. They didn't have any drawings or renderings at the time. And each meeting that this organization had, the staff came back with different information, different funding, different recommendations. So they were set up to fail. Now, much respect to this committee. These are volunteer citizens that came out and gave up their time at home to work for the city. They did an excellent job with what they were given. And I would have probably came up with the same solution they did, given all the information they were given and how many times it changed. So they did an excellent job. I heard they got along real good. And they worked for one goal, just like the council does. We work for one goal. So much respect to them, and I appreciate all the time and effort they put in. But the $36 million was never promised to the citizens. I was told that. And so that's what I've been thinking this whole time until I investigated it. What was promised to the citizens would be the special bond election book, along with the resolution that the city council signed with the citizens, and along with the proposition, the B ballot. And on there it said that we would spend $52,360,000 for public safety. And it also says by levying a tax sufficient to make the payments of principal and interest therein. Now, everyone knows that this city council and the previous city council has worked hard during budget to lower taxes. For the last 5 years, taxes have been lowered. There's no intention with this council to ever raise taxes. Now, the economy may tell us otherwise, but this council has no intention to ever raise taxes, so that's not a fear there. But we want to work the budget the best we can to get what we can for the citizens and what we can for the police department, fire department, and public safety communications. And we want to get all these roads repaired too. It's going to be difficult because it's going to be more than the $36 million that everybody's talking about. It's going to be more around $42 million to $49 million.
Okay, and that was the debating point. Which of the higher figures were y'all going to have to deal with?
Right, and we have the capacity to do either one right now. It just depends on the council members' personal opinion, how far we need to go with that capacity and how much we need to save.
If I understand right, $42 million was the number that was finally settled on after debate.
$42 million was what was settled on. It gets you a building outcrop that will last 20 years. It's not everything that the police department needs. There's a lot of other variables they need, and we're going to continue to work on this. There will be another meeting.
What figure did you prefer?
My figure was $49 million, and with that $49 million, there was a lot of extras that you got. You got the Sally Port, you got the holding cells, you got the evidence moved into the building, not in a portable building out in the parking lot. You got the 5,200 square feet that we needed for public safety communications. You got the old building completely renovated along with the sprinkler systems. We have a lot of valuable documents and evidence in that old building and personnel working in there and citizens in there. And it definitely needs a sprinkler system as large as it is.
Well, at my concern, if I were listening to this from the outside, they had $36 million allotted to it. So in any case, it increased to $42 million or to $49 million. I also heard other numbers like $52 million. Was that just throwing out there or something that overheard, or was that an official
we
proposal?
We promised the citizens on the ballot that we would spend $52,360,000. We didn't promise them a $36 million police station. That was what was suggested by the bond committee.
Okay, so let's go with either the 42 or the 49, because if I remember watching the meeting a couple of weeks ago, that was the area in which y'all debated. It was in 52, I don't know, got a lot of attention, but I do know that 49 and 42, that was where you're going back and forth. Where would that other money come from? Now, Bill Janish here has got his opinion. I'll read it. Here, Larry is spot on with a reasonable and knowledgeable assessment. Anything less will have citizens being forced to pay tens of millions a few years later to do what will be a few $1 million more now. Okay, we'll bring that point up as well. But right now, where would the extra money come from?
Where the capacity would come from is Green Ridge and Wicker Hill Drive. They're down near the Panchar farms on the southern end of Burleson, and they're right up against the farms, and that's developing as single-family homes right now. And we're going to push that back instead of doing it immediately. One of the reasons is that development grows across those roads or up to those roads. There's good opportunity then the platting that the developer will take care of those roads. Plus we have impact fees as the community grows down there that we can use to take care of those roads also. So there's an opportunity to push those back and hope for the best in the future on those. Also, that road, to the people that live on that road, is the most important road in the city of Burleson.
Which road would be specific?
Wicker Hill and Green Ridge.
The most important for the entire city?
No, for the people that live on that road.
Okay, that's misunderstood what you said.
And they want that road in good shape, and I understand that. And we absorbed those roads from the county, and what we're going to do is bring them up to city standard. But they're still good roads. They're operational roads. I've looked at them. There are some potholes and some cracks in it that could be spot fixed. But we got an arterial road now for those that used it for the cut-through road. A lot of people did that. And that was a lot of wear and tear on that road, which is going to reduce the life of that road. But we built Lakewood Drive now. It's an arterial road that goes the same direction as Wicker Hill. So that'll take a lot of that traffic. It becomes an option road now. They can option to take it or not. So that'll extend the life of that road. So it's a good option to push it back.
Well, as far as the 6 or what 13 million additional money, what I heard was concerns that money would have to come from other areas of the budget because this year's fiscal year has already started, and so I don't know how legally or how you work these things out, but to maneuver money here and there, that sometimes makes my head hurt thinking about it. But
well, that's
where would
that's
the money
that's $5 million there for moving those two roads.
Okay.
And then we have an additional debt capacity this year in 2023 of $7.7 million. Each year, your debt capacity grows. As we pay $16 million a year against the bonds, we reduce the bonds, and as growth grows, we get more ad valorem tax. So that increases your capacity.
But banking on the growth of our community, I mean, in the last few years, that's been a very solid bet. But we have to admit our economy is somewhat in flux right now. Bidenomics is not doing as great as he'd like us to think it does.
Well, the city uses 2% growth in all their calculations, and we've had an 8% year over year for the last several years. So we're doing actually better than what we're predicting. But if it does go down, that's why we call what we tranche the bonds. And those that don't know what tranching the bonds are is we go, for example, we're going to borrow $80 million. We'll borrow that money, issue that bonds over a 5-year period.
Yes, I've heard that been described several times, yes.
So year 1, you'll take out $20 million. Year 2, you'll take out $20 million. And year 3, 20, and year 4, 20. And what that does is as you spread it out over a 4-year period, it doesn't increase your tax rate.
Well, isn't the rise in interest rates also a factor in that tranching process?
The rise in the interest rates are also a factor in it. But as we get bonds that are 10 years old, we can do what's called a refunding and refund them at a lower interest rate, and that will gain some capacity of $1 million or so in each one of those. The other thing that tranching the bonds does is if we have a catastrophic event, I've heard if we have a catastrophic event, how are we going to pay for all this? Well, if it happens, say, between year 2 and 3, then we can push year 4 and 5 back a year and take care of the event with the bonding capacity for year 3.
You know, I was talking to some friends about this who keep up with this. They live in the city. You'd be surprised, well, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, how much politics is discussed right before Sunday school. You know, between the sermon and the coffee and in the Sunday school, there's a lot of other talk besides Scripture going on. And a lot of them, we were talking about this about a week ago Sunday, and they weren't, upset or whatever, but their two main concerns were either the tax rate would have to go up or they'd have to take money out of other department funding like streets or parks or fire department, whatever you want to say. They just generally said other departments. Is that either one of those two a possibility? If we go to 46 or 49, is that a possibility? We're going to have to move money from one to the other?
No, we're not going to move money around. What's fixed in budget stays in budget.
Well, they're talking about even next year.
Next year, we could possibly move things around. That's what happens. A 5-year CIP is a growing product. And each year that we have the budget meeting for 3 months, we move everything on the 5-year CIP. Nothing stays where it originally starts, almost never.
Well, that's what I told them is that what they were concerned about, like next month or January, y'all take X million out of, water and sewage and put it into this budget. And I said, no, the budget's set, and I don't know how. There may be a mechanism to do that, but I doubt y'all would do that.
No, we'll never take out infrastructure.
Right.
Water, sewer, roads, it will stay as it is, and we need that for growth.
Well, and so their fear about it being shifting over and depleting other necessary things of money, I told them this is going to be a discussion for next August and September, not now, because the budget's there. But is it possible in the next budget you're going to have to say, okay, we need X million more for the police station, even more than we're saying now, because look, what's going on with pricing of construction.
Well, next year it could go up, yes. If we go with the $42 million, and we've gone a little higher than $42 million because we've negotiated to put the holding cell and maybe the Sally Port on, so it could be up to $43-44 million. And if we go ahead and do that, it'll be bonded out over the next 3 years.
One question I did have that I thought I knew the answer, but I want to make sure from somebody knows. Are we talking about a brand new structure, police station, or adding on to what we have now over on Wilshire and, I forget the name of that street, but whatever.
We're going to keep the 24,000 square feet that we have, the old building.
Right.
And we're going to, what we decided on this last meeting is lightly renovate, move some walls, carpet, paint, things of that nature. And then there right behind it will be a new building.
Okay.
Of a larger square foot. And that'll have most of the officers and the public safety communication in it with the hardened building.
Okay. That's what I told people, but I don't want to make sure that y'all weren't thinking about a whole another piece of property and a whole building from ground zero, because I'd been told, but I just want to make sure that people know that we're not talking about you moving the police station further out, but you're just going to add to where we got there, which is a good place to have it. It's like a central location for so many things that are going on now. Now, I'm going to address Bill's point here. He says that if we don't build what we can now, then will it cost us more later? Okay, well, and Jackie Jones, I'll get to your question in a minute after he answers Bill's question. But Bill's saying here that if we don't do it now, it's going to cost us more later. Is that an accurate statement?
It's kind of accurate. If we decide to add on to it later, it will cost more. What we've historically done is put the police department in a building that was undersized to start with. And then as they grow, they just compact into rooms. And we don't add on.
Right.
And that's historically what's been done. In the future, it could be different. If we go with the $42 million in 7 or 8 years, yes, we will have to bond out some more money to get them what they need.
And there's different types of bonds I've been taught over the while, but that's a whole nother conversation. That's a hypothetical. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail, but I understand Bill's point, but also sometimes the other side of the coin is for me or others is that we don't have that money right now. And it's like, yes, if I wait to buy this new car, it's going to cost me more later, but I got to have the money now to buy the car. Well, and if I don't have the money for it, then I look at something else.
We never have the money for it, ever, on any project. That's why we bond out over a 5-year CIP, is to spread the money out when we get it with growth. For example, in 2008, we bonded out $40 million in bonds. In 2023, we bonded out $40 million. So we bonded out this year the exact same amount we bonded out in 2008. And that goes $32 million for 14, $34 million for 15, $39 million for 16. And those are projects that we built or developed over a 4 or 5 year period that are just now getting finished.
Well, I think Bill has a good point that whatever we don't do today, we'll have to do later at more expense. But I guess the counterpoint that I've been hearing is we're going to have a hard time affording what we're going to do today, because we are asking for $6 million more in the budget next year. And, I assume we'll keep growing, and I hope the budget is large enough to assume that extra money without costing other departments. Then the $49 million, there's nothing that was proposed that I thought was trivial or wasteful or useless. I don't know, just some optional thing we do to make ourselves look pretty or whatever, like decorating or landscaping. To me, it was all pretty much functional. So the argument wasn't we're wasting money at $49 million. It was all necessary stuff.
At $49 million, it was all necessary, everything that we would get.
But if we can't afford the $49 million, then it's like I'd like a new car with all these other options, but I'm going to have to take this car because that's what I can afford. Is that how this works?
Not necessarily how this works.
All right.
Every year when the city does a budget, they could always say, well, what if we don't grow? What if we have a catastrophic event? That's why when we do the budget, we do it with such a low rate at 2%. And we hope for more growth than 2%. We have to make the hard decisions. We have to do the calculations. We have to use the data. We have a financial advisor, Hilltop Securities, that we issue bonds through that works with us during budget process to make sure that we don't exceed our limit.
Well, I'm going to ask.
There's several checks and balances to make sure that the city's protected.
Well, I'm going to refer to Jackie's question here. Has the police station ever had a brand new building?
No.
Okay. I have no doubt that everything that the $49 million is supposed to cover, not only will do better for the city, but I'm just taking, for the sake of our conversation, I'm going to be, I'm taking the $42 million so we can understand why there's been a difference in the council, because Dan's coming on Thursday, and I'll let him speak for himself, but I saw with the conversation, and I think he was more along the line of 42 million, if I remember right.
He's right with 42 million.
Right.
Option one, you're correct.
Right, and I will ask him why not option two, but I'm asking you why option two when the money is, that $7 million difference isn't just going to appear out of nowhere. We hope, and we'd like for it to, but it isn't.
Well, it's not appearing out of nowhere. It's already there in the capacity that we have this year.
Okay.
What we're based in our figures on was 2022 numbers. Mm-hmm. So in 2023, we gained an extra $7,700,000 in capacity. And, that's just like saying the $88 million in capacity we had to use last year could or could not be available.
But we're not talking about a brand new building like Jackie's asking about, but we are talking about a bunch of larger presence. And I also believe, and Bill has another question or another comment. He says, I believe the contractor even mentioned each time some renovations are complete, the cost to add on the sprinkler systems will be a $1 million cost each time. That's, I know what Bill's point is, but it's just like, we're not like the federal government. We can't just wish money into existence. We got what we got, and that's it.
Adding on to a building in the future is like finishing out a white box. A lot of people want to white box businesses, and 20 years from now, that's still an empty shell. Adding on to a building 8-10 years from now, if that's what we need, it's not going to happen. There'll be more urgent priorities at that time. They're operating just fine. They are cramped. They do need it, but it will never happen. So if we don't do it now, then this is what we'll have for the next 20 to 30 years.
Some of the comments I saw about this debate, I think, most of it was kind of like what we're having now about money, capacity, whatever else. A couple of people, I think, took it too far, and they said that we weren't supporting the police well enough. That's not how I look at it. It's not so much that we're shortchanging the police, just because when I was in the school district, every time we didn't get what we wanted, I didn't want to take the attitude, well, they just don't care about education. That's not what they're saying.
Everyone on the council is concerned about the police department. Everyone loves the police department. They know how good they are. When you take a council job, you could be sitting out on a lake fishing, but you volunteer to serve the citizens of this city. And we sit up there in that dais, and we make hard decisions every meeting. In between meetings, we're studying 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And if you don't believe that, call my wife. She'll tell you about it.
Oh, Victoria's told me a lot about how much time she's had to spend doing her homework.
They dedicate themselves to the city and the citizens and to the police department, the fire department, public safety, public works, parks and recreation. Everyone that made that decision the other night, they did not make that decision against the police department. They made that decision for the police department. What they thought in their heart and the facts that they had was the best for that police department. And the last thing they deserve is a hate letter to be bashed on social media. They don't deserve that because they were doing what they thought was best.
I saw the debate, and when the 49 million side was talking, I said, yeah, I could see that. And then when the 42 million side were talking, yeah, I could see that. That shows how difficult this issue is. It isn't like, it's not a black and white issue. Because if you had asked me right off the top, I would have I said, yeah, more money. But then if I were presented with the budget constraints and other contingencies, no, 42 million is right. So I was confused, to be frank. I didn't know. That's why we vote for you guys. That's why we trust y'all. That's why we vote for representation to make these decisions. Because you have information that I don't have. And I got to say that for the vast listening audience, this is what democracy looks like, as they always say. The debating of issues without acrimony and, give and take, push and pull, whatever. But this is, we're watching government in action. And this is what government does, it should be doing. I wish our U.S. Congress was this way. So, but as far as, to be frank, I'm sitting here now and said, Larry's right. We need 49 million, but I bet Victoria, when she's on next week, she'll say, well, here's the other side of that.
She'll have her opinion. You know, we can't talk about this outside the dais, the council people, because it'll become a quorum.
Or Open Meetings Act, you betcha.
Open Meeting Act. So we do our own individual research. We talk to people. We gather data, and then we go to the meeting and we discuss it in the meeting. And we have 30 or 40 minutes to discuss what each one has identified as good and bad. And that's not really enough time. It should have been 2 or 3 meetings we discussed this before we made a decision.
Can you revisit that decision?
We are going to revisit it.
Okay.
I can promise you that.
Okay. Well, you have the ability to put it on the agenda, right?
I have the ability.
Okay.
Any council person has the ability to put anything on the agenda. Now, when we compare this, and people are out there talking that going $49 million is like buying a car with all the whistles and bells on it. I've done that, and I end up not using half of what I bought. But paying $49 million for the police building, there are no whistles and bells. There's nothing gold plated. There's no silver. It's exactly what they need, and they will use every bit of it, every bit of that $49 million.
It is a hard decision. I'm going to go through my second round of sponsors, and we'll kind of wrap this up because there's actually is other city business, isn't there?
There's a lot of stuff going on right now.
But anyway, so I like the fact that my sponsors make this possible for us to have a conversation like this, like Southern Gym. They've got a lot of Christmas stuff going on. Gail was on last Thursday, so check out that show. Go check out her store because she has a lot of good inventory. Also, it's getting close to the time where if you want your stuff repaired or evaluated or cleaned and all that stuff, you better come in pretty soon because she's going to be booked up pretty soon. Just like I kind of backtrack on auto. If you want like pies for Thanksgiving, you better get your order in now. So, but Gayla, I was at her store last week, because most people know my wife works there, and I dropped by. It's a jewelry store that a man can enjoy because they have a place for you. If you don't want to look at jewelry, you can watch the TV and have a drink or Dr. Pepper or whatever. So, anyway, thank you to Gayla at Southern Gym. Also, thank you to Old Pro Roofing and my buddy John, 817-734-2756. When it was raining last week pretty hard, I had peace of mind knowing that my roof wasn't leaking because he had already checked it out, and he gives you the straight story. He's a good kid. Well, he's no kid. He's a man, but I mean, all of us old guys, younger guys are kids. Sorry, Taylor. And that's the way it is. Old Pro Roofing, 817-734-2756. Also, our old friends Sammy Campbell and Candy Gow, they have started their own company, Camco, for mortgage brokering, and they're still in town. They're at the south end of the B&G building on the 3rd floor, and they did my house twice back in the day for refinancing for school expenses and repair expenses. So if you got refinancing or you're buying a new home, that's where you need to talk to is these two ladies because they're really, really good at what they do, and they hold your hand through all the process, which is very confusing. Also, today is election day. Oh, I'm sorry. I got a new sponsor. Doggone it. Sorry, Matt. Matt Cobb. That's why I have Taylor around. He keeps me on track. The Cobb Plumbing, you've probably heard of Cobb Plumbing. I mean, we've been around Burleson a while. And Matt Cobb is now the new proprietor of it. It's passed down from great-grandfather, grandfather, father, and son. So everybody knows in Burleson Cobb Plumbing. And if you have a plumbing need, then you need to call them because I've had them in my home a couple of times to fix a leak or things of that nature. A toilet was broken and they fixed that. So Cobb Plumbing has been well known in Burleson since 1970. And if you mention this spot on Mr. Allard's Neighborhood, to get 10% off the service call. So if you're looking, call them. Also, now what I was talking about was the election day, right? Today's election day. And I've been pushing this for our friends in Joshua ISD. They were on the show a week ago Monday, and you can check that podcast out and talk about what they need. So, of course, like all these things, there's, some people that are not sure if they want to support a bond, but in my opinion, this November 7th, the date is very important for Joshua because they need this bond passed. Their schools are overcrowded, particularly in the Burleson area of Joshua ISD. That's where a lot of their growth is. And so those schools over there, like North Joshua Elementary and whatnot, may have Burleson residents in it. And so this isn't something that is affecting our neighbors. This is something that's affecting Burleson residents. So we need to pass this bond. So if you're over in Joshua and eligible to vote, you know what to do. People hear the word bond and they some people react negatively to that, but that's how things get financed at the big level. Almost all your capital projects are done through bonds. And there's no way that any city or community or district can fund new buildings without passing some sort of bond. And that's just life. So I don't know. I know that people don't like it. I know you wouldn't want to have another bond issue.
No.
You'd have to
Well,
answer that.
The city, I can speak for the city, not the county or school district. We don't have a savings account. We're not collecting money, saving it for a rainy day. That's the reason we bond.
Is that even legal? I know it is at the state level, but do schools, and I know school is supposed to have 3 months of rainy day savings in case of a major catastrophe or some other event or, just whatever. But it's not, that rainy day fund is not to be used for capital projects.
That's correct. You can pass an ordinance or in your financial statement, your priority funds, you can demand like a 20% in those at the end of the year. But we don't recommend it for all funds. Most of our funds are zero funds. We zero them out at the end of the year and start over next year.
Right. Well, that's kind of what we did with the school budgets. That, and one of the conversations I had with Victoria was about the mandates the state places upon schools and with y'all. And so sometimes you have to make these expenditures because the state of Texas demands it. And right now, this is kind of a side note. I know that there are a collection of communities that are suing the state of Texas over what they call the Death Star bill, right? The ability of the state to supersede local ordinances. Are we involved in that?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
it's never been brought to us.
Well, what the gist of it is that let's say that Burleson asks more of its contractors or residents or whatever than the base amount that the state provides. The state can negate that. There was a big story in the Dallas paper about a month ago about a fence contractor that had to basically forego jobs because the city of Lancaster added more requirements to their contractors than what the state of Texas demanded. And so there was all this hullabaloo about who runs the city of Lancaster. Is it the state or the citizens of Lancaster? We haven't had any episodes like that, have we?
No, we've discussed Death Star in a few places, but unless something's changed in the last couple of weeks, we're not involved in it.
No, it hasn't. I mean, it was decided by a judge in Austin, down in the People's Republic of Austin. And I understand what they're trying to do, what boys in legislature, or the men and women, are trying to do in the legislature. They're trying to prevent communities from just arbitrarily imposing things upon their citizens. Like I think the primary catalyst for that whole bill was when the city of Austin cut its police funding by a third and that kind of thing. And they didn't want cities to do that at the risk of their citizens. So I got that. But we also, there's some things that I like for the city of Burleson to have a handle on more than the state of Texas, like contractors and obligations and what do you do about apartments that aren't being well kept and on and on and on. That's a real problem. I mean, particularly the apartments.
Yeah, this last session there was a lot of bills passed that we've had to review. Size of a lot, size of the house, a whole lot of other issues. And we'll have to consider all of our ordinances, our zoning, and adapt.
Well, I understand the argument of trying to prevent a community like Austin from doing drastic things, or really it was also the two areas of the state that bill really was directed towards was Travis County and Harris County down in Houston. But I could just see situations here, like we have a contractor who wants to build an apartment, and we want to have certain things done that isn't mandated by the state of Texas, and he could say, I'm not going to do it because it's going to cost me money, and you can't make me do it. And that's what bothers me. As I don't want housing or apartments to come in that meets the bare minimum standards the state sets. I want Burleson to be able to say, we want more from you in terms of maintenance, in terms of size, in terms of whatever. And he could go back and take us to court right now under this law and say, you're asking more than the state requires. And so I think it may lead to substandard housing in a lot of communities.
It could. We make our decisions, our ordinances based on reality, what they can do and what they can't do. And it's growing. We're always changing our ordinances. And if it doesn't fit what Burleson wants, then they're not going to build. And we stick pretty firm to that.
Well,
we do some variances, but like I said in the last council meeting, I didn't want to become the council of variance. So we need to work on our ordinances, and they are at this time, to get them correct between residential and industrial.
Well, I just hate for the fact that because the state of Texas standards aren't going to be very high because of various reasons, and I would just hate for substandard housing to be built because they can get away with it, whereas Burleson won't be in a position to say, no, we don't want this kind of housing. And housing is a big political issue in this town. A lot of people don't like having a lot of apartments. Some people say we need more. I'm sure you hear all about it.
Well, a lot of the state's authority comes from how many grants, how much funding you get from the state. Every time you get grant or funding for sidewalks, streets, or anything of that nature, that gives them control over part of your city.
Right.
So as much as we appreciate that, we'd still like to regain control of our city.
This is totally out of y'all's hands, really, but also concerned about the federal government getting involved and saying that if we don't have X type of housing, we're violating civil rights, which is what the policy was under Barack Obama and Joe Biden. That if we didn't have this amount of Section 8 housing or something like that, then we'd be taken to court by the federal government. And that happened under the Obama administration. I haven't seen it yet with Biden, but once he wakes up, maybe he'll pay attention to it. I don't know. So there's a lot of things you got to deal with. It isn't just the citizens of town. You got to deal with outside influences on how you make decisions.
That's what we depend on our attorneys for.
Yeah, I guess so. What other issues besides the police station you think are needing attention here in our town? It needs some work.
Well, we have some ball fields off Hidden Creek, the Hidden Creek complex. It's time to make a decision on what we're going to do with that complex, whether we want to bring in a resort type hotel or we want to bring in a convention center of some kind. But that's been sitting there brewing for about 20 years now.
What?
Go
ahead. I'm sorry.
It's time to put an end game to this,
right,
and move on.
You've been on the show before saying that you didn't want the city to take on a convention center or a resort or however you want to phrase it. You wanted this to be totally a private initiative. Am I remembering it correctly?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're not in that business.
All right. Because one time we talked and I said, hey, we need a convention center, but you said, look, we don't want to take on another maintenance and capital expense and whatnot. Right. And
well, we've got the brick. We run the brick. That's a business. We run the golf course. Neither one of them are sustainable. They always have to have extra funding from the 4B, 4A, or general fund to keep them going. We get a convention center, it's going to be the same way. It's not going to make enough money being run by the city to support itself. So we'll have to give up something else to help fund it.
Would you object to having like a private developer do what we're talking about, having a space for a convention, hotel, stuff like that?
That would be the way to go.
Okay. The Chamber of Commerce is sending out a survey about what you think about this kind of thing, what the members think. And I haven't gotten to it yet because I was late on my back yesterday, but I'm going to get to it. But there is, I think, a need for some sort of central meeting place. We can't keep going to Pathways or First Baptist for city events. Plus, and not to be particular, but if you have some of these events at a off-site location like a resort or whatnot, you could have probably a more variety of events besides those that are just what we do. Like, for example, you could have events that allow alcohol be served and things of that nature. I think we need something like this, but I just remember you were adamant against, no, we do not need to bring this into a city budget situation.
I don't think we need to support it. I think we need to make tax money off of it to relieve some of the stress on the citizens. And more tax money we can make from outside visitors, the less we have to depend on the citizens.
But it will take, from what I understand, a vote of the citizens to be able to transfer that public property into private hands or something like that, right?
That's correct. Right now, that property is 4B property, which is Parks and Recreation. You cannot sell Parks and Recreation property without taking it to the citizens to vote on it.
Do we have any suitors, so to speak, have y'all talked to people that want to develop it?
Not that I know of. We have the survey that's come out, and we have our economic development that we've met with, and they have an understanding of that's the direction we're looking for. And so I'm sure they're working on it. But as far as what they're doing, I'm not privy to that at this time.
Well, I've got Alex Phillips on Monday, and I'm going to bring a bat with me to get some information out of him. I mean, he doesn't say anything, but I'm going to ask him about this. But I know it's been something that's been discussed quite some time, but...
Well, Alex is a man of action, very few words. He gets a lot done for the city, and it's amazing. I can't keep up with what he keeps bringing to the city.
And he didn't even hint off the air. It isn't like, I know a secret. Let me tell you, he doesn't take me in his comment. He is as tight-lipped off the air. He is on the air. So, but I'd like to see something happen with that because we've been needing that for a while. I've been hearing conversation about something like this for a decade. And probably, like you said, it probably precedes my knowledge of it.
Yeah, it's been going on for 20 years, and it has been closed down for over 15 years. And then it was opened back up for citizens to use for practice. But there's no revenue at this time on it, only cost.
Well, I played a few games on it back in the day, and, I wasn't like I demand AstroTurf on my field or something like that. But even back in the 90s and early 2000s, when I was more active playing softball, you had to think twice before you dive for that ground ball because you'll end up, all scuffed up. But anyway, I just think it's a perfect location for somebody. I bet some developer will come in, and we don't need like a 40-story hotel there. I bet, I don't know, 4 or 5 stories at best.
4 or 5 stories, nice convention center, more of a resort atmosphere where families can come as well as conventions.
There's a couple other pieces of property that have been discussed, that the city owns. One is off Renfro, where the old church was, where Hill College worked. Is that any movement on that?
We've had some movement, and then it went away.
Oh, really?
And right now we're putting out RFPs, and we're hoping that we get something.
What was the reason they backed off? Is the economy or what? Because that's great. That's a great location.
It's a great location. It just didn't fit what they needed.
Well, I talked to Victoria about this a little bit, and she has, multi-use kind of thing, and, that ties well with Old Town and things like that. I think that's what's going to happen ultimately.
Victoria's got some great ideas on it.
Well, she's really into idea development, like parks and such. That's her specialty, I guess. But there was another public piece of property, and my brain is not working well, but basically it was another discussion point. But I guess it can't be that important. It's the one that is, again, on Renfro by the grocery store, by City Market, whatnot. That has been, I don't know. I just thought people would jump on that one because it's perfect for what you want.
Well, it depends on what the city puts out there in the RFP, what they expect.
Oh, and now I
There's
remember.
parameters.
Now I remember the other piece of property is where the old police station was. That was being discussed possibly as being for sale. Taking out that police station. My only request was keep the trees. Keep the trees. Yeah. Trees are added value. But other than that, it's going to be used for maybe a multi-use building and additional parking.
Right. What they plan on doing is bulldozing the building down and saving that corner for a future pad for retail. The rest of it and the older house next to it will be all bulldozed down and extra parking for Old Town.
That little yellow house across the street from where I go to church, First Baptist?
Yes.
The city has acquired that property?
The city has acquired that.
Wow. I did not know that.
And that's what I was told, and that will be part of the parking lot, looking at the plan.
Well, I know right now that they're using First Baptist on the weekends, and we're glad to do it. I mean, it's the city supporting kind of thing a church should do, and so...
We keep spreading out, we're going to have to get that shuttle.
Yeah. Well, I've heard about that too, but that property on the corner of Renfro and Johnson, my goodness, you could put a really high traffic business right there, more than probably most. Anything on Renfro or Wilshire is going to get the traffic.
Well, this is going to happen. We have city employees in there right now that we need to move into City Hall. And as soon as the Ellison Street project is completed and we can move some of the employees across the street.
You're talking about the upper decks of the Heim and Razoo and all that?
Right.
Okay.
That part of that is the city's, and we'll be moving economic development and a couple of other departments over there. And that'll make room for the departments that are at the old police station to move into the City Hall. And as soon as that happens, then that old police station will come down.
Well, that's interesting because I've been in City Hall a few times, of course, and it's not like, well, I'll rephrase. It's like the school administration building. There are people on top of people practically. I mean, they're basically using every square foot for office space or whatnot.
Well, we'll spread out across the plaza, I guess, not the road, the plaza. And we're going to do a light renovation on the City Hall. And by doing that, we'll be able to increase the capacity of people we can put in there.
Yeah, and I know it's all necessary, but it is interesting because, you grow up in this town a little bit, these landmarks become so familiar that when they're gone, you notice. I mean, when I'm driving down one day, boom, that building's gone over at Renfro, and it just looked odd,
Well, you see that on 174 in Wilshire right now. Every day you drive by there, there's a different building going.
Now,
and that's progress.
It is, and but it does put a strain on city budgets. There's no question, because you got to provide utilities and the sewage and whatever else for these new built buildings. So as we grow, it's not a pure profit. There is some expense involved.
We have impact fees that are charged to every developer for water, sewage, and predicted road use to get to that facility.
Is that a common thing for all cities to do?
That's a common thing for all cities.
Okay.
And our impact fees, we just met on it again and raised them. They were low compared to all other cities. So we elevated them slightly, but not enough to run off any business.
Yeah.
It will help maintain the roads. And that's what I was talking about on Wicker Hill earlier. As the developments grow out there, we'll get impact fees that we'll be able to use to upgrade that road. So we may not even have to do a bond with it. And that's one of the advantages to pushing it back, is to let development catch up and see if we can do it without having the citizens pay for it all.
Yeah. It seems to me, just on that last phrase about the citizens paying for it, y'all are adamant not to raise taxes. I mean, I get that impression from all 7 of you that we do not want to raise taxes, but it does require some adjustment of the budget or adjustment of thinking, I guess.
Well, we don't want to raise tax rate.
Well, right. That's what I meant. I mean, if your value goes up, your tax rate's the same, you're going to pay more money, but that's a different thing. But Bill here says, I'd like to see the city make real efforts towards improving our stormwater drainage systems and clearing out our existing stormwater creeks. Speaking of that, I've mentioned this to Victoria. That property, this is another piece of property that's going to be available, is that where China King used to be, or Jose's.
Right.
All right. That creek that runs beside it is an eyesore, to be frank. I mean, you're on the other side of Johnson Street. You took care of it. You made it look nice. Put a bridge over it. Made decent equipment. Because back when I moved here, that Warren Park, that was the best place in town to get tetanus from all the rusty old equipment. So, but that other piece of property from Diane to the Wilshire, is there any possibility the city could? Because that is city property. It
is city property. Part of it is parks.
That would be nice to see that.
It hasn't
more
been
attractive.
discussed, but it's something. I'll talk to Victoria and we can bring it up and see what we can do.
Yeah, I'd like to see. Now, personally, I think that'd be a wise use of city money, because people drive by that all the time, and I don't think they pay attention to this. Oh, what a terrible ditch! I'm not moving here. Nothing like that.
Well, they might when the new building shows up next to it.
Well, I was thinking that it'd be a great place for a restaurant that could incorporate that nice scenic area now to like a patio or whatever, if it's a restaurant or whatever it is. Do you have any understanding of what's going on with that piece of property?
Not completely. I've heard that it was going to be like a small shopping center with 2 or 3 businesses in it. But I don't know what businesses.
Yeah, that's always the last thing. But that's still, that'd be great. What we need are dry cleaners, car washes, hamburger joints. That we seem to be doing pretty well on those.
As far as the stormwater drainage, there's not a whole lot more the city can do. We can try to keep them cleaned out, but we'll have to get an NCT, COG, North Texas, COG involved. We'll have to get Corps of Engineers involved. They'll have to do hydrology tests. There's all kinds of stuff, and that takes years and years and years.
Yeah, it does. I read an article just last week about how difficult it is to build anything anymore because of all these permits and studies that have to be done. I mean, EPA would probably get involved and see what it would do to the environment and all this other businesses.
But as we develop, we get more concrete, we get more runoff. There's less land, less farmland to absorb the water, and we will eventually be in trouble. We'll have to do something.
And that's an issue that most people don't think about until it rains, right? And then they notice. I've lived here 30 years, and I've seen a couple of times it rained so hard that it caused flooding in the city. But, it was a couple years ago, I think in August, we had like 10 inches, and there were large parts of the city that were unreachable because of the water. And I was pretty much locked into my place because the water is so high in certain spots.
There's 7 or 8 locations in the city of Burleson. Every time we get a heavy rain, that they pretty much barricade the roads.
Yeah.
And that's where I would start focusing.
There seems like there's a lot of things that need your attention, don't it?
Oh, it's never ending. But that's what we run for election for. That's what we want to do, and that's what we're going to take care of. As much as you can put on our plate, we'll take care of it.
Well, I'm going to let you have the last word, but I will say a couple of things, is just for business sake here. On Thursday, I'm going to have Dan McClendon, and I'm going to take the other approach to elicit answers, and he's fairly aware of that, and he's fine. Same with Victoria. I'm going to have her on Tuesday. Monday, I have Alex, And I don't even know who I have on next Thursday, a week from Thursday. I'm really kind of tied up here. BISD, I look forward to that. I'm going to talk to Seth Hickman in the early college program, which is one of the best things we offer as a city and a district. But I want to say for the vast listening audience, thank you for your service, for your understanding of the issues, your homework that you do. We appreciate the fact that what we're talking about and what we see in public on the city council is what it looks like to run a city. And even if there's differences of opinion, it's not a cause to go to war. And I just really appreciate that quite a bit.
No, I'm proud to be on the council I'm on. We have a great council. We meet in executive session, and that's usually where the war happens. But that's what I've been told. But I haven't seen it yet. We go in executive session. We all go in there with the knowledge and wisdom that we need to make the decisions, and we walk out of there all happy and still friends.
And it's not like, I'm sure they're very frank conversations in that room, but they stay in that room.
Well, they have to be. You have to have those tough conversations. And we have to walk away with a good understanding that we had the best decision.
Well, your wife, Sherry, has to say he works hard at this every day, and she's so very proud of you. That makes it a lot easier to do when your wife is proud of you.
She does most of the math for me.
And then she also does those blessing boxes still. That's a real blessing to the community.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time, and I appreciate you explaining things to us. I think you convinced me, but maybe Dan will convince me otherwise. What my opinion on the police station is, I'm going to trust y'all's judgment. That's where I stand on it. I'm going to trust what comes out of it.
One other thing is Matt Aiken passed away, and I'd like for everybody to take a moment of prayer today.
Yes,
he was a councilman for several years and dedicated himself, and one of his attributes to the city was education for the city employees.
Well, he was a former student of mine. He was back in, I would say 20-something years ago. But Aiken was a student of mine. I could tell right then he was going to be a success. He was very, very smart, and he just, not just smart, but he understood things. You know what I mean? He just like, you could, like he was in my history class, and I could explain something, and he understood more than what I was just telling him. And I always thought he was a very bright young man. I know he was a great attorney, and I know he's co-founder of Old Pro. And I've been kind of keeping up with what was going on, but I did not know he passed. But I knew he was very, very sick in hospice.
Yeah, he's passed, and his family need your prayers.
Yes, they do. They're good people, and that's the kind of citizens we produce, I'm glad to say. Thank you for reminding me of that. So, but anyway, so guys, we'll see you Thursday with Dan, and he's going to give me his opinion on things. Bill and Jackie, appreciate y'all's input. Makes the show better. So we'll see y'all next Thursday.